Hello, everybody. This is a somewhat random topic, but something I kind of want to talk about. I was watching some video, and for some reason in the related videos there was something about Holocaust denial. I was like, okay. So I heard about this Holocaust denial people, and I'd never really looked into it or ever. I'm watching these videos, and these people are full of shit. But I think there's something to be said about why people gravitate towards this revisionist historical standpoint on something like World War II. Why these people flock to this idea that all the things said about the Third Reich and Hitler were all not true. And they were true. I mean, shit. Not everyone in Germany is to be blamed for this, but, you know, the Holocaust did happen. The numbers are, you know, 6 million, 5 million, 5.5 million. Does it really matter? You know, it matters to those people, but does it really matter in terms of how evil it was? No. But like I said, there's something to be said as to why people gravitate towards this. Now, a lot of people that do it are just anti-Semites who are looking for some other, you know, conspiracy to pin on the Jews, because people have this... I don't know what it is with people hating Jews so much, honestly. But I think part of the problem here is that we don't offer a middle ground when it comes to events like World War II. There's either the you know, Holocaust is a lie and Hitler was the greatest person on the planet and all this shit, or it was the Nazis are all totally evil. It was a fight against, it was good and evil. We in America and England and Russia were awesome, and we were so great, and blah 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 blah. And so there's only those two ends of the spectrum that are talked about. Obviously, the latter is talked about more. And as it is said, and it is usually true, history is written by the winners. So, what I would suggest is that we teach an unbiased history of events, and this is something that has always bugged me, being as deeply interested in history as I am, that they never seem to mention what the good guys do or did, you know, in any war. You know, Revolutionary War is something that, you know, it never talk about how Americans or rebels or whatever you want to call them went and, you know, murdered loyalist families who were civilians and shit, burned down their houses and scalped them and shit like that. They never talk about that. You know, we don't talk about how, you know, we went and raped and murdered the Indians in this country and killed them all. We don't talk about how the Union Army was allowed to run rampant in the South and do whatever the fuck they wanted to a lot of people in the South that were innocent, because most of the Confederates didn't own slaves. And we never talk about the things that we did and that our allies did during World War II. You know, things like Dresden and the fire bombings of Japan. Now, a lot of people are like, wow, we bombed, you know, we bombed Hiroshima and Nagasaki. What a terrible thing. Well, yeah, I guess. I mean, but we killed way more people before that. We literally firebombed every major city in Japan over and over and over and over, and there was some military significance to it besides just the terror factor. But I mean, the way Japanese industry was set up, their manufacturing was spread out in the cities. They didn't have big industrial centers, traditional industrial centers like we would have or the Germans had or something like that. So there was some military legitimacy, you could say, in bombing those cities, but it was done over and over and over and over and over and over again. and we killed a shitload of Japanese people. Does this excuse the Japanese crime? The crimes of the Japanese? No. They raped and murdered their way through China. They were absolutely horrendously brutal to American POWs because of their odd sort of honor code. But I mean, we're all responsible for terrible things. It does a great disservice to reality and history to act like one side is totally blameless in a situation. Hitler is, every time I saw a commercial the other day, it was like, Hitler, the most evil man who has ever lived, and it's like, yeah, he's pretty fucking evil. But what about that Stalin guy? Stalin killed more people than Hitler did, believe it or fucking not. His own people and German prisoners of war. Of the 100,000 German prisoners of war who were captured at Stalingrad, less than 5,000 escaped, or not escaped, but were survived until they were released. And yet we were allied with these people. Out of necessity, but it just shows that us and our friends are not blameless. Our founding fathers were slave owners, and in Vietnam, it wasn't our soldiers' fault. It was really unfair, the things that were said to Vietnam veterans. It's not their fault, but it was a unfair war. We had no legitimate purpose in being there besides pissing off the Soviet Union. We gave weapons to the same people that are killing us now. We forced a dictator on the Iranians. We helped put Israel in a really not legitimate position in the Middle East, and we continue to support them no matter what they do. Personally, to me, that whole portion of the world can go fuck itself, but we have ourselves really deep in there. Like I said, we bombed Dresden. I mean, after the First World War, we made the Second World War happen. We destroyed Germany's economy rather unfairly. Germany was not the aggressor in the First World War for all intents and purposes. The First World War was created by a very complex and ridiculous series of treaties, which is part of the reason why the Founding Fathers instruct that we shouldn't be involved in those treaties, in entangling alliances. And we destroyed Germany's economy and took away their army and all this shit just to sort of gloat. They weren't responsible for any huge crimes or anything in the First World War. Thankfully, in the Second World War, we were smart enough not to do that again. I guess we figured having every one of their major cities bombed into oblivion and losing an entire generation of young men for within 30 years was enough punishment. But I think it's time that we start to teach history that is unbiased, so that people don't gravitate towards either of the extremes, the we're perfect and we've never done anything wrong ever extreme, or the it's all lies and none of this ever happened, blah 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 extreme. We have a obligation to look at history realistically. We don't avoid talking about the things that the Roman Empire did. Just because we've done bad things doesn't mean we're bad people. We seem to have some belief that if we admit that we fucked up, that means we suck forever. But the Roman Empire gave us plenty of things that we use today, and they were responsible for terrible tragedies and travesties. forcing slaves to fight each other in coliseums and enslaving most of Europe and just invading people for the fuck of it. You know, there's always two sides to every coin. You know, I don't know. It's bizarre. It's a bizarre conversation to have with people that are either on one of the either extremes that are both inaccurate. Like I said, it is bizarre to me that people go for the Holocaust denial thing. There's some people that are more in the middle on that are like, well, it was less people or some kind of shit like that, and then there's the people that are like, it never happened, it was a Jewish conspiracy, and all this shit. But, you know, I'm sorry, but it happened. There's too much evidence there. But the thing that is to be remembered is that something like the Holocaust could have happened anywhere with Jews or with another group. We're not, you know, the Germans are not unique in their killing of all those people. I mean, the same thing could have happened in America with blacks. Have you ever, if any of you have ever read any of Harry Turtledove's books, he does like alternate history books and shit. And he has a series. It's all about what if the South won the Civil War, and like there's all these ensuing wars after with the North versus the South, and then like the last books in the series focus on a fictional war between the North and the South. It sort of parallels World War II, and in that version of World War II, it was blacks instead of Jews enduring a Holocaust. And, you know, given a few key events, the shit could have gone that way. You know, we act, you know, people acted so disgusted with the Holocaust, and yet there were many places in the United States where Jews were subjected to horrible mistreatment, and their businesses were, you know, vandalized and shit like that. Hell, we incarcerated most of the Japanese American population during World War II. Imagine what would have happened, you know, say the Japanese had been a little bit more successful in that war, say they had done some shit like defeated one of our fleets and killed a whole bunch of people or something like that, or I don't know, it succeeded in assassinating the president. I don't know, any kind of shit like that. Those Japanese people could have easily been killed. By ignoring facts of history one way or the other, ignoring things that are true, and making up falsehoods, we put ourselves at risk, because there is a lot to be learned from, you know, from history. We have to realize that nobody's fucking perfect. You know, this is long-winded as fuck, but I don't give a shit. I don't know what I was watching. Something about Iraq, and somebody had a comment like, these people. Oh no, it was the shoe. Sorry, yeah, it was about the shoe thrower, and this guy's like, you know, you know, this is a great thanks to be giving us after we liberated their country. I'm like, liberated? Liberated from what? Their own government? You know, yeah, Saddam's a douchebag and did a lot of terrible things, but you know, the Ba'ath Party was put into power for the most part legitimately, and there was a hell of a long time for the Iraqis to do something about it if they didn't like it. Saddam's regime was not really strong, showing how quickly they fell apart during our invasion. You know, it was guaranteed either way that we were going to win that war relatively quickly, but if the Iraqis had been slightly more organized, the shit could have been much more difficult. They still had a lot of technology and a lot of soldiers and a lot of tanks and some planes and shit, and they just didn't utilize them because the shit was poorly organized. They just weren't put together well. And the simple fact that we were able to roll through that country in such a short amount of time with so relatively few casualties in the initial phase, the actual, like, what you could call the war between the two countries, as it were, went through that shit so quickly, shows that if the Iraqis had really had a problem, they could have done something about it. And, so I said, they weren't liberated and whatever, and the guy's like, they were liberated. See, this same thing that I'm talking about applies to looking at Iraq in the same way. It's either one way or the other. Either we're terrible, evil murderers, and all of America is responsible for this travesty against the Iraqi people, which it is a travesty, but we're not all responsible. Or it's, fuck them Iraqis, or it's they were liberated. One of those two viewpoints that are on that kind of side of the thing. And I mean, who's to say what level of crime need be considered, totally evil? How many civilians have been killed in Iraq? 600,000? I mean, we didn't kill them all, but they're only dead because of our being there. So are we going to be called, in front of international court for war crimes? I don't think so. Are we going to be called in front of an international court for being fucking stupid, for creating the problem in Afghanistan in the first place when we armed Muslim jihadists to fight the Soviet Union for no reason other than we wanted to piss off the Soviet Union, like we gave a fuck about Afghanistan? There was nothing of economic worth to us in Afghanistan until we built the pipeline and had pipelines built after we invaded the son of a bitch. So basically what I'm saying is that history has two sides. There's good and bad on both sides. There was great good in what we did during World War II and the Revolution and the Civil War and Iraq even, and there's great evil. Good, we freed ourselves from oppression in the Revolutionary War. Good, we freed up people that were in bondage during the Civil War. Good, we saved the world from being overtaken by fascism when it wasn't wanted. Not that we have any right to stop countries from implementing their own fascism, but countries need not have fascism forced on them by foreign powers. We did that in World War II. In Iraq, I guess it could be said that we had the possibility of maybe stabilizing the region if we had done it right, but we didn't. Bad things we did in the Revolutionary War, we slaughtered innocent loyalists in the United States who didn't do anything. Evil things that we did in the Civil War, we let the Union Army run rampant through the South and burned southern cities to the ground. Evil things we did during World War II, bombing German cities, creating the policy of morale bombing, which is one of my favorite oxymorons. That's not even really an oxymoron, but it's a strange saying. And in Iraq, we've inadvertently or, on purpose, killed 600,000 people. It is my hope that we will begin to teach history in a slightly more unbiased way. It's my hope that people would look at things from both sides and see that all of us are capable of travesties, and see that people we consider and that are evil are not always evil all the time. If you've ever seen the movie downfall. It's a German film. I don't know if it was made by a German filmmaker, but it's a German language film about the last 10 days. Yeah, 10 days in the Führer bunker, which was Hitler's private bunker in right next to the Reichstag in Berlin. And at the same time that he's going insane and ordering troops that were retreating for their own lives to be shot, he's also sitting in a room with Goebbels. Goebbels is Hitler's propaganda minister, with Goebbels' children while they sing Uncle Hitler a song. And if you were to not know anything about Hitler and not see any other part of the movie and just saw this man sitting in a room with these children smiling while he has a little girl on his lap while they sing him a song, you'd think, hey, he's not a bad fucking guy. Looks like a nice guy. I'd like him. I'd like to have that guy over for fucking dinner or some shit. Maybe babysit my kids. So it just goes to show that you can't always judge a book by its cover, and you can't always take one side to the story. So that's my long, boring history rambling video.